Hello, FloorCon. How are you? Woo! That was my old theme music. That's good times. Return of the Mac. How are you guys enjoying the third ever FloorCon? I was pumped to be here because I was a small business owner for the formative years of my career, and I still look back on it as the best time of my life, really. How many of you all operate your own business? Look at that. You know what that is? That's the backbone of America right there. About $700 million in retail business represented in this room, and that means thousands and thousands of people with jobs they enjoy, who can put food on the table, or doing something that actually helps make people happy. I mean, you guys touch everybody. My mom actually went into a retailer to get her floor replaced. You guys all remember that. And she had a shitty experience, honestly. She came back and was like, hey, what's going on? They're telling me this, they're telling me that. And this is what you guys do every single day. Am I right? Like you're the delta between someone like my mom having a not so great experience or having an experience that they're excited about. And you all are in like a unique position, really, as an industry right now, because there are some things you can control and some things you can't control. What are like the problems that you're actually thinking about right now? One is that apparently it's hard to find a good installer, am I right? Like that's a problem. Other problems are that you build a relationship with a customer and then the customer says, hey, what about this, that, and that? And you can control some percentage of these things and then some of them you can't. And I've been in your shoes when I ran this education company. So people think about flooring as potentially something that's interchangeable. Maybe they go to different businesses, something of a commodity. I ran an education company and we were in a similar situation where you think, okay, education, tutoring, business, and one of the main ways we differentiated ourselves was technology and the consumer experience. In our case, I remember sitting there and then having someone show me Facebook and investing in websites and a blog, and I thought to myself, who the heck is ever going to read anything I write on a blog? I mean, like, you write a blog post, and I had a 24-year-old who like went on to work at Google be like, no, you really need to write this blog post, because if you write this blog post about, in your case, it might be like flooring in a particular county or area or state, believe it or not, someone's going to Google, Gainesville flooring, and you know what they're going to see is this blog post. And I did it, and oh my gosh, like they were right. Like I wrote that blog post, and then all of a sudden it ended up generating, in our case, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business. So the way we competed was by trying to put ourselves in front of the customer when they started looking for tutoring services online. And from that company grew and grew to become #1 in the country, in part because I kept investing in whatever would give us an edge over our competitors. Now, if you run a private business like most of you do, how many of you feel like you're the head of a family? You know what I mean? It's like you show up to work and you're making decisions, you have people that work for you, and they're your employees, yeah, but you feel sort of responsible for them as like the head of a household. Am I right? Like you feel like there's like this extended family. Sometimes it's the best feeling in the world. Sometimes you feel like, oh wow, I'm giving this person an opportunity, a leg up that they might not have had otherwise. Sometimes it's a really bad feeling because there's something that maybe you can't solve, or maybe sometimes the person isn't the right fit and they're asking for things and you're like, wait a minute, that's not how it works in this family. But the decisions you make end up giving that little family the chance to grow and have the opportunities that in some cases most of them couldn't even have imagined. The problem that I'm focused on right now, very big picture, is trying to get it so that you all can actually do what you do, focus on it, and grow without being held back by structural things like whether or not you have enough skilled installers that actually want that job. How much can a reasonable installer actually make starting out? Too much. That's funny. A lot of you are thinking the same thing. So the answer is it's a good living. And so you think to yourself, you know what, like if we have so many people in this country who would actually benefit from having a good living, why can't we not actually fill that need? And that's something I'm really passionate about, particularly because in this country right now, we've got a crushing need for vocational and apprenticeship education. Like the numbers show, and I'm a numbers guy, I had math hats. Believe it or not, we sold about $3 million worth of math hats last campaign. So the numbers say that vocational apprenticeship education just pays for itself. And I think that we as a country should be investing a lot more in that. What do y'all think? So in many ways, that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on trying to solve the big problems so that you all can just grow, grow, grow. My arc as someone who ran a private company that grew to become #1 in the US, when that company was bought by a public company, which by the way has its ups and downs. You know, I don't know if any of you have ever entertained an acquisition or had that sort of conversation. But you go from being the head of your family to not. So I was like the head of this family for 6 years. We grow to become #1 in the country, and then we're bought by a bigger company. And I thought to myself, oh, this will be good. This will be fun. But at least in my case, it was hard for me to wake up and then work for this big company. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. I guess I'd been an entrepreneur and an owner for too long. And I remember when I got this call from my new boss, and he said, hey, we need to find some more revenue for this quarter because we're about to file to a public company. It's like we just need to pretty up our numbers, really. And I was like, well, I can do that, but if I do that, it's going to be bad for the business because I'm going to do something that's just going to hurt us next year. And he was like, yeah, go do that. So I got that message from my new boss, and I was like, man, this is why like I'm not going to be long for this outfit. So I ended up taking a sharp left turn and starting a nonprofit that helped train entrepreneurs around the country. You saw a little bit of in the slide. So how many of you all are entrepreneurs and ended up getting in? I mean, some of you actually were installers and then ended up transitioning into being an owner-operator, which I think is like the best transition in the world. You know, like that's the stuff of the American dream. But I thought that there weren't enough people getting into small businesses around the country. So believe it or not, after my company was bought, I went to my wife and I said, hey, I'm going to start a nonprofit to help channel young people to small and growing companies in Detroit, Cleveland, Birmingham, New Orleans, Baltimore, St. Louis, cities around the country that I think could use some technology and energy and innovation and dynamism. And my wife was like, wow, that sounds interesting. I mean, she didn't really know. I guess maybe I didn't really know exactly what it was going to entail. How many of you are involved with a nonprofit? You should really just pretend on that one. That's like, are you a good person? So, and I can't tell the difference, as you can tell. I mean, I don't know. So I'm going to try that again. How many of you are involved with a nonprofit? All right, good, smart. See, that's entrepreneurship in action. It's like, sure, I can raise my hand on that one. So nonprofits run on two things. What are they? Money. Money's one, and what's the other one? Passion, thank you, that's right. See, she definitely actually volunteers for a nonprofit or works for a nonprofit because she knows. So if you have a nonprofit, and in my case, I started this nonprofit and I donated 6 figures myself just to seed it. I was pretty serious. I was like, you know what this country needs? More entrepreneurs, and I think I can help with that. So I donated 6 figures to start this organization, and then hustled, ended up, raising millions of dollars for it over time. And the nonprofit ran on money, yes, which I needed to go get, but also it ran on my passion, the passion of the people around me. And so that's how we grew over this period. And over that time, I went around to communities like many of the ones that you all live and work in. I thought, like, wow, hopefully there's something that we can do that's actually going to help uplift and create jobs in more places. Like, I'm just Mr. all about a good opportunity is worth its weight in gold. And I thought that's one reason why I'm so passionate about trying to get people into vocational apprenticeship, because if they have a good opportunity, then they can put food on the table. That's why I started this entrepreneurship organization. And then I made the decision to run for president of the United States, which is when some of you saw me on your TV screen. You all remember that? And I remember I know what the experience was. You turned on the TV and you were like, who's the Asian guy standing next to Joe Biden? And then you Googled Asian guy standing next to Joe Biden. And then Andrew Yang popped up and you're like, oh, who's this guy? This is different. Like, what's he talking about? So, and I was talking in large part about technology and the impact it's going to have. Now, I have many, many friends who work in technology. This nonprofit I ran worked with folks in Silicon Valley and tech for 6.5 years. And technology is changing a lot of things in our lives. Now, in some ways, what you all do in flooring retail, it's very, very old school. It's very gritty. I mean, there's nothing more old school than people getting on their hands and knees and installing flooring, like in my mom's apartment. But at the same time, technology is upending a lot of things. Technology is upending the way customers expect to get information, expect to find businesses they can trust. And so you want to be on the side that's benefiting from technology and not losing. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the things about entrepreneurship is like you can see this wave coming, and you're like, you know what? I'd rather ride the wave rather than have the wave come crash over my head. So the technology that you all are investing in, it doesn't solve all your problems, but it keeps you one step ahead of the curve, and that's what the family members around you all rely upon you to do. Like, they don't understand the decisions you're making, but if you make the right ones, then you can be in a position to actually benefit from some of these mega trends that are coming down the pike. So in my case, I started running for president in part because I saw these mega trends and I thought, you know what, there are going to be some people that win from this and some people that don't do so well from this. And so here I'm going to set this interesting question upon you all. How many of you have thought about running for president yourselves? Oh, look, this man, that's what I'm talking about. Him too. Who else we got? We got 2 takers. There are only 2 rules for running for president of the United States. What are they? Natural-born U.S. citizen, that's number 1. And what's number 2? 35 years or older. So I'm asking you all, what's holding you back? I feel like that describes the vast majority of the people in this room, am I right? So that's what I thought when I saw this. I was like, you know what? I think I want to try and help this country understand that technology is changing a lot of things. And one of the ways I think I can do that is by running for president. So I looked up the rules and said, what do you need to do? It's like, well, born in the US, check. 35 years or older, check. So then I end up going to my wife, hey, baby, what do you think about me running for president? And then her response was, of? And then I said, obviously, of the United States of America. What are you talking about? So the question is, how the heck does an anonymous entrepreneur wind up on that TV screen in front of you all, in front of 70 million Americans? I ended up making 7 presidential debate stages, outlasting a dozen senators, governors, cabinet secretaries, members of Congress, et cetera. In part because people wanted something new, but in part because I tried to use technology and the tools that we have today to actually get in front of people in a way that other people weren't. It's like, how many people ran for president last night? You guys don't even remember. It was like something like 25. It was a lot. And so the question is, how do you actually differentiate yourself and get yourself in front of, in that case, like customers, which were like the American people and voters. So what we did is we just took on the entrepreneurship hat and said, like, okay, like, what are the tools? Like, what do we do to get in front of folks? And we ended up taking advantage of some tools that other political figures actually either didn't want to use or didn't know how to use, so this is how you end up raising $40 million and outcompeting all of these name brand candidates is by having a message that's a little bit different, but also by using tools that others do not. So at the end of that presidential campaign, and at this point my in-laws actually were talking to me again, because at first they were like, your husband's doing what? I am Asian, so it's not like my family was like, you're gonna run for office someday. It was more like clean your room and get good grades and the rest of it. So when I told them I was running for president too, they were like deeply concerned. They almost had like an intervention or whatnot. And they came in. So what does an Asian intervention look like? They just sit around you and don't talk to you. But ended up turning that around by raising $40 million and becoming something of a household name. And that was through entrepreneurship. That's the same thing. It's like that's what drives me, is the sense it's like, you know what? We don't have to do the things the same way we've done them for a long, long time. We can actually try and reinvent ourselves, use the tools. I'm pumped for this community that Broadloom is building, that FloorCon represents. Again, $700–800 million worth of revenue in this room, thousands and thousands of jobs. And some of you, as individual retailers, you think you've got these problems. Then you meet people here today, and what do you find? You're like, wow, these other people are going through very similar things to what I'm going through. It's like, some of the problems that I wrestle with actually are not my problems. They're like problems that everyone here has. And occasionally, you can help each other. Occasionally, a bunch of you getting together and having, maybe someone who can represent your interests is helpful. So coming off the trail now, I'm driven by the fact that still, to this day, I don't feel great about our ability to solve some of like the biggest problems in front of us. Returning to technical and vocational training, there was a book that came out last month. It's called Of Boys and Men. And it was about how boys and men are struggling in American life now in terms of finding a path. And he was making the argument that, again, the numbers say we should be investing in vocational apprenticeship. And so the question I asked is like, well, if it's so obvious, why aren't we doing it? And why aren't we doing it? What do you all think? Why indeed? He was just like, yeah, why? If like you guys were in charge, you'd make that happen yesterday. But the reason we're not doing it right now is that we're not necessarily actually motivating the folks who have the policy levers to do things that solve our problems. Like that, there's like a broken connection between what we all see as pretty obvious or common sense or something that's going to help move our communities forward, and then what happens out of our leaders or representatives. So my task right now is to try and rebuild that connection. And how am I going to do it? That's right. I'm going to use technology and entrepreneurship to try and advance this case and say, look, like we don't have to do things the way that we've always done them. Actually, if we do things the same way we've done them, what's going to happen? Not necessarily great things, Like that's one of the things that drives entrepreneurs and owners and operators is like, you wake up every day, and if you don't show up, then you don't stand still. You actually start falling behind. Like you all in many ways are such like the engines for your organizations that if you stop pumping, then the organization starts to slip. And so the question is, how can we get more people to actually be energized by a vision, a set of goals that will help us solve the problems, put you all in position to grow, and make it so that young boys and men and women, who right now I confess I am focused on young boys and men, actually have an opportunity that they'll be excited about that's a good fit for them. Not a good fit for what they're told is, like prestigious or something like that, but actually like a good, real path in front of them that's going to put food on the table and give them the chance to grow in a way that maybe puts them in a seat like yours 10, 20 years from now. Like that's the American dream. That's what we have to make possible. And many of you have lived that dream. Let's try and make that dream persist over this next number of years. So thrilled to be here with you today. Hopefully you find the story of how someone, I can go into it and we can talk at some length about it, the story of how someone goes from anonymous entrepreneur to outcompeting a bunch of lifetime politicians. And by the way, hanging out with them, did some of them like hate the fact that I was there. I could tell you some stories. Like one of the candidates, who shall remain nameless, was practicing his lines backstage like it was a high school play. I'm like, come on, man. This is a freaking presidential debate. I don't need to see you rehearsing. I have a whole sorts of other stories too. Like that time, I was standing between Tulsi and Kamala while they were shivving each other on national TV. It's like, wow, this is really awkward. Yeah, it's, when you get in close, like they're people, yes, but there are, let's just say like they're not exactly all like normal people. Oh, yeah, I kind of left the yard a little while ago. Yeah, so. Oh, wow. So the question was, how did Joe Biden do with his lines? Honestly, not so well. I'll say things to you all that I have said in other contexts. Like the more people saw of Joe, like the less likely they were to go for him. It's just math, really. Like, because if you look at the map, like who saw the most of him? It's like Iowa, New Hampshire. Which, by the way, I was there next to him all the time. And I said this on TV the other day, and like someone shouted at me immediately. But I was like, look, man, I spoke before, after Joe Biden half a dozen times, and you know what people weren't saying when he came off stage? Like, wow, that dude should be. And then I immediately got yelled at for saying that. I was like, I was there. I mean, shoot. Anyway. Good times ahead, the US of A. Yeah, there's a lot of entrepreneurship going on in our political world. Maybe from one end. Yeah, other questions? Let's start unpacking this stuff. I love it, sir. So he's asking, what did you do specifically to try and make yourself a household name during that time? Some of which would be applicable to you all, some of it wouldn't. I know this because I ran a consumer business. So the things that worked, and I referenced a little bit, is that you guys aren't going to believe this because it seems so dumb, but investing in content actually ends up paying off for your business. And I referenced it a little bit with that blog post I wrote. And you think, like, who's going to read my stupid blog post? But it turns out that the way customer acquisition works, like if you put content out there, it actually ends up living online and then attracting and generating energy. So in terms of my campaign, if I did a podcast interview or a YouTube interview or something along those lines, you'd think, oh, okay, like no one's going to see that. But then that thing lives online, and then over time it ends up attracting people. And occasionally something ends up breaking out or becoming a hit. Now, one of the struggles is you're not sure which is going to break out. So in your case, if you're, let's say that you were to have someone, and it could be a young person, it could be you if you like this stuff, to generate customer interviews with happy customers about their experience, about someone breaking down different flooring products and saying, hey, we recommend this and this is why. Like if you start investing in those things, sometimes you're not going to see the return immediately, but a lot of the times the return will shock you. So when I was running for office, initially the cable news channels were not excited to have me on. And so there's actually one of them that a producer said we were given a list of candidates never to have on, and I was on that list. You know, it's like, I guess that worked. It was MSNBC, but whatever. So So, as a result, I ended up investing a ton of energy in various podcasts and YouTube interviews. And then some of those interviews ended up being extraordinarily viral and powerful. So in my case, the one that really launched us was Joe Rogan. When I was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and something like 6 million people saw that stuff, and then I started, frankly, getting stopped on the street by people being like, hey, you Andrew Yang? It was always like a secret, being like, hey, you Andrew Yang? And I was like, yes, I am. You know, my favorite was this. Hey, am I racist or are you Andrew Yang? To which I said, I can't answer the first question, but yes to the second. So you do these interviews, and some of them are very obvious. Like I kind of thought that the Rogan interview was going to get seen by a lot of people, but others would totally surprise you. Now, so if you decide to invest in this sort of content, one of the things I might advise is like you might not want to make it you. You might want to take someone on your team who's sort of young and tech savvy and say, hey, you know, like see if you can produce like a quick video for you know, social media and Instagram. See if you can do this, see if you can do that. There might be someone in your organization who jumps at that opportunity. They're like, oh, dope. Like I'm going to do some brand building and like use my TikTok skills or whatever the heck. And you'll be like, yeah, go do that. One of the things I did in the education company was anytime a new platform came along, I would have a young person create an account on that platform and then say, hey, feed it. And one of the things that happens with social media in particular is that you get what you put in. If you don't put anything into social media, you're going to get nothing out of it. If you put energy into social media, it's like an uneven path, but you tend to get out what you put in. And so if you end up investing in content, so on the presidential, I would talk to anyone for a while because I'd be like, hey, you know, it's like, sure, like I'm trying to get the word out. And so you put time in, you end up getting results, and then sometimes something really ends up taking off. Where you get, in your case, it would be like a super ambassador who ends up having a positive experience with your business, and then you bring them in, and then they end up just shouting your name from the rooftops. How many of you have customers that resemble that? Hopefully some of you, right? So if you get that customer in front of more people, then that ends up building trust and can have tremendous returns. Look, we've got a jam box that I think might even have a mic on it, so she can throw it out to you and make something happen.
Who's got a question? Wait.
Yeah, look at her run with that mic. Let's give a round of applause on that.
Okay.
That's hustle. That's some FloorCon hustle.
That was awesome. You made a comment about get people to see your vision. What is one of the ways you would get people to see your vision with being an entrepreneur and getting them to see your vision and working hard at that vision for you? Thank you.
So in your case, I'd imagine it would be trying to put out a value statement where you say, you know what, like my goal is to make it so that anyone who comes through our doors ends up having this superior, personalized customer experience, and they feel that we were open and transparent with them and a partner throughout. We actually want to elevate the way people think of the flooring retail industry, something along those lines. And you can have, for yourself too, a statement of who you are. You can talk about how what gets you out of bed is trying to make it so that people have a better home, better experience, like better place for their families. To be able to play and grow up. And that sounds maybe like it's a little bit flowery, but it ends up becoming genuine in part because when you put it out there, then you know who sees that? Your team first. Your team's like, oh, I guess like we're about something a little bit more. And then your customers end up responding to you and expecting you to actually take steps in that direction. So a lot of it starts with just expressing it. I'm going to ask a question that's in the same vein. How many of you write down your goals? Writing down your goals helps make them happen. Am I right? Yeah, and that's proven by science and psychology and a bunch of other things. So when you talk about the vision that you have, as soon as you actually express that vision, make it concrete, take some time, write it down, like have a video of yourself saying it, anything along those lines, it ends up becoming real for your team and then customers. So that's the way we did it both at my company and on the campaign. We had a value statement at the education company around excellent instruction, superior customer experience, and innovative curriculum, something along those lines. So if you put that out, then you'll end up moving your organization in that direction, and then customers will respond to it. Now people here are like, ooh, vision statement, It's like, I mean, you think that stuff maybe is a little bit aspirational, but it becomes real. And customers can recognize it when you're trying to live up to it. All right, where's that box at? Where's our runner?
Right over here.
Oh, good.
First off, thank you very much. I have a question. You've been doing the social media for a long time. What is one of the things that you've done that you could tell us would be one of the biggest mistakes you could make in social media?
Mistakes? No, I'm just kidding. So here's the tough part about social media. There are a lot of tough parts. If you're really boring and corporate, no one will care about anything you do. If you inject some personality into it, which often will be the domain of whoever you have managing the social media account, then it ends up having a higher engagement level and better reach and more energy. But you end up running the risk that they'll end up stepping on some kind of tripwire or landmine or doing something that someone finds offensive in terms of, let's say, cheeky humor, something along those lines. Or, God forbid, something that gets politicized, because unfortunately in this day and age, what percentage of things get politicized in American life? I heard 100. I was gonna go with 99, but let's take 100. So there's this constant tension in terms of social media, and this is something that I had to navigate, because if you look at most businesses' social media feeds or most political candidates' social media feeds, they're completely boring and predictable, and you can tell a lot of the time that the owner-operator was not involved. As soon as you end up injecting some of your own essence and personality and viewpoint, then people perk up, because they're like, you know what? I think this person's actually doing it. I think that's actually this CEO or this owner's real life feed, and so they'll pay more attention. But then the temptation is that you end up saying something that reflects your views in a way that will turn some people off. So it's a constant balancing act, honestly. Social media, in terms of its effect on our kids' mental health, I'm going to suggest is something of a net negative. It's not making our kids happier and healthier, honestly, because it can get inside your head in a way that ends up pushing you to be a little bit more, let's say, sensationalist or provocative or something along those lines, because you end up wanting to be rewarded by more engagement. And so you wind up pushing up against that envelope. The question in some ways is, can you actually maintain this positive on-message balance that's personal and catches people's eyes without stepping too far? So I don't know if I just scared off a lot of you from going down this road. Some of you were like, pass, hard pass. Young people do tend to have a pretty good radar on this. They can make things sort of, fun and engaging without hopefully doing anything that's going to offend anyone. In my case, did I make mistakes on social media? 100%. Was it a net positive for me? Yes, because I had, not the mistakes necessarily, but I was running a high variance campaign where if you didn't take some risks, you were going to fail, so you want to take risks. How many of you are football fans, NFL fans, you know what I mean? How many of you can't stand it when you can tell that a coach is playing to lose to lose honorably rather than win. You know what I mean? Like they're down by a certain amount, and you know that they should ratchet it up in terms of aggressive play calling if they want to win. But a lot of them like don't do it because they're like, I'd rather lose by 7. I'd rather lose by 10. So it depends upon what you're trying to do. Like in our case, it was like, look, we need to compete. So we're willing to take certain steps that we know are going to occasionally have drawbacks. So it depends upon where your business is, really. Did people get that sports metaphor? All right, good. You know what I mean, so yeah, so we were playing. It's like we're down by 10. Like let's just freaking like air it out, and then airing it out in our case meant me like cracking jokes about various things, and then some people would be like, "How can you joke about that?" And other people would be like, "Oh, I like this." So, but that was a conscious decision on our part.
Hi, Andrew. Next question would be, if you had the, I'm over here to your right.
Thank
to your
you,
left,
thank you.
To your left. Right there, stop.
I got you.
There you go. All right, if you owned a flooring company today, and you had to go put your social hat on and say, okay, these are the 3 things we're gonna do, what type 3 things would you do right away, and try to be as specific as possible?
I love these questions. You know what you are, my friend? You're an operator.
In the ass.
No. You know what you are? You're an operator. An operator is like, hey, what do I actually do? So let me dig in for a second. Like, who do you have on staff that you could assign to this sort of project? He has an army. I love it. Okay, so if you have an army. Are your customers younger or more mature? 45 plus. So one thing to know is that the different platforms have different audiences. So what platform do 45-year-old plus use? Facebook. So the goal would be to try and build a Facebook page that is active and connects to something that they might have an interest in. So it would be Facebook and then content that is going to be helpful to the customers that you're looking for that also is good for search engines. So I referenced before, like product comparison pages kill, like in a good way. Because you're going to have names of products, and a lot of people are going to end up Googling a particular brand, and then they may end up on your Facebook page or your blog post. So number 1 would be to assign someone to your Facebook account and just make it look alive. When someone goes to a Facebook page, they're like, this thing is either real or it's not real. And if it has some followers and some energy and some posts, then it's like, okay, like that, then it's real. So number 1 is the Facebook account. Number 2 would be content that is search engine friendly and will help differentiate you and make you seem like an expert and trusted. So product comparisons are awesome. Customer reviews or experiences are awesome. Videos, really, really helpful, and you can just put them in the Facebook feed. So those would be my top 2. And then the third would likely be, and this might not fit into the social, but you can do very, very cost-effective search engine advertising against your assets, especially if your content becomes half decent, and then direct people to it. And the great thing about the search engine campaigns is that you can cap the spending, you can make it so you're only getting like a certain level of ROI, and that ends up juicing the number of people that go to it, which ends up feeding into the entire the like aliveness and energy. So those would be my top 3.
I appreciate it.
So I know we talked backstage about installation crisis, and I think on everyone's mind is, how can they get more installers, and what can we do as a country to get more people into vocational schools and learning about installation. We've talked about it a lot here, and I would say there is no good solution. So my question for you is, how would you, if you were running for president, how would you solve that problem? And just to stir the pot and ask a funny question, what do you think Trump would do to solve that problem?
So I referenced this a little bit earlier. I'm the father of 2 young boys who are 10 and 7. And I was talking backstage about a fact. This fact is gonna make, this fact shocked me, and I was like, well, I guess I trust it, because it's a trustworthy source. But since anyone was measuring this sort of thing, there was a difference in grip strength between boys and girls. Like, boys had stronger grips than girls. And then more recently, they measured it, and it was identical. And so then someone asked me, it's like, well, what the heck happened? And I was like, well, I look at my boys, and they're like online a lot, which isn't exactly like giving them robust grip strength, unfortunately. So I say this to preface the fact where when you ask, like, hey, what would I do or what the problem is, that if you were to caricature things really quickly by gender roles, people talk about the Republican Party as the daddy party and the Democratic Party as the mommy party. And you all probably heard that, right? And now in this day and age, like both of them have kind of taken on like a slightly more, let's say, like accentuated or extreme version of that, where the Republican Party is like not just masculine, but it's kind of like the angry, like it's a little bit like, kind of this angry masculinity, and then the Democratic Party's become this sort of like, no offense to anyone, but it's like sort of like a nagging school teacher. Something along those lines. And so what's missing right now is like what's this happy medium where you say, look, like this isn't like pro or against anyone in particular. This is just trying to solve a problem and put people on a path. And there was something that happened in the Democratic primary that pained me greatly, is that I was talking to someone about this problem with boys and men. And then another Democratic candidate said, hey, I believe this, but I can't talk about this because in the Democratic base, like they don't want to hear about boys and men, And I was like, oh, that's like the worst thing ever. It's like, shoot, man. I mean, like we're all, Americans, and like I'm a father. I mean, it's like you look around, and the fact that we're letting this stuff get politicized to the point who said that 100% of things are politicized in America today. Like this should be apolitical. Anyone who looks at it and just like objectively, what should we do? We should be like investing in this immediately, yesterday, because it's going to help everyone. When you ask what Trump would do, you like to think that he'd be all into something that's going to help build. I was shocked that when he was president, he didn't like get infrastructure done. I was like, at a minimum, this dude's going to build some shit, I mean, like just, I mean, it's like, the dude like, made his name putting his name on giant structures. Like at a minimum, he would build massive bridges and infrastructure and then slap his name on it. And the fact that that didn't happen, I was like, I can't believe he let 4 years pass without doing that thing. So you like to think that whoever winds up in office will end up solving this problem, but the issue, though, is that solving the problem doesn't score them political points. What does get them political points?
Hi.
Getting people ginned up and, and frankly, like, trying to get you to, like, blame the other side. I mean, that's, to me, like, the core problem, is that at this point, I don't need to solve your problem. I just need to have you hate the other guys, like, a little bit more than you hate me. Imagine if you all ran your business that way. Imagine if you're like, you don't have to like me. I'm just going to get you to hate my competitor a little bit more.
Right here.
I mean, anyway. I mean, that stuff. So I'm going to throw something out about like this, and this is going to maybe make you mad. What is the approval rating for U.S. Congress as we're here together today? I'm anchoring you low, so you know it's low. Like, how low are we talking? He says 12. It's a little higher. It's between 20 and 28%. What is the re-election rate for incumbent members of Congress? 94%. If you're a sports fan, that's a better win rate than the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors or the Jordan Era Chicago Bulls. So imagine if your business had 3 out of 4 customers who were pissed off, and then you change nothing. Like you'd be like that's madness. But that's what's happened in our political system, because 90% of the districts are drawn to be uncompetitive. It's going to be blue or red. So then if you're in office, like you're pretty much guaranteed to get back in, and you don't need to change anything. So that's why apprenticeship, vocational schools, and the rest of it can go unaddressed, is because, look, if I don't change anything, like, we're golden. I've got a 94% win rate. Like, you know, like if you had a 94% win rate, like, what would you do? You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh, it's, like, I guess it's okay. Whatever we're doing or not doing is working out, even though 3 out of 4 of us want something different to happen.
Okay, hi.
Over here.
Aloha. Hi, Andrew. I wanted to learn if you can share some examples of what you've done in your past companies to make the consumer experience better. And since you're a math guy, I want to know how you measured it.
Oh, another operator. Love it so much. So at the education company, the main thing was to try and actually have someone get the results they want. So in your case, to have a good customer experience, it's like, you know, does someone actually get the flooring installation in a way that makes them happy, on time, like at the cost that they thought it was going to be? Some of that stuff you can't control. But to the extent you can, that's actually the core of it. Because we're still at a point where people talk to their friends. They will visit that home and say, oh, new flooring. I mean, who the heck doesn't want to show off their new flooring? You know what I mean? You just like spent an arm and a leg. So after you get the new flooring in, what are you going to do? Invite some friends over. And then what are your friends going to ask you? It's like, oh, who did it? You know, and then they say your business, and they say, can't say enough good things about them. Like, that is the core of it. If you fail at that, then like all the content and the rest of it will just wind up having you ask, like, why isn't it working? If the core customer experience is positive, you can actually not invest in a lot of social media and you'll do just fine. like that's the essence of it. Now, if this is a situation where like 1 + 1 = 3, where if you have happy customers and then you invest in amplifying their stories, and maybe even turning them into ambassadors for you, and maybe even like giving them a reason to care about you even after their flooring has been replaced and installed, then you can wind up seeing like a real synergy in terms of having the customer experience grow. And when you ask how we measured it, we asked, you know, does everyone respond to those annoying surveys? No, but if you throw a little bit of energy into the survey and say, hey, we'll put a $50 gift card to Amazon to someone who responds to the survey, then you'll get a response. And then you can use that to try and drive feedback. Oh, by the way, that ends up being great marketing collateral for you. Because then if you send that survey out and then it says 90% of your customers are happy, you say, we have a 90% satisfaction rate in an industry where the average satisfaction rate is what? I actually don't know what that number is. Do you guys know what that number is? Well, then I guess you could just make it up. You could be like, we have a 90% satisfaction rate in an industry where the average is 25%. We are 3.5 times better than normal. You know, so it's something that you can invest in. And you know the great thing about those surveys? If it's negative, you don't have to publish it. You know what I mean? You hopefully will talk to your team about it. You'll be like, hey guys, what the hell are we doing? But I mean, if it's good, you can shout it from the rafters. You know, the other way you can measure this is just by how your business is doing, honestly. I mean, it's like if people are referring their friends and family, then you kind of know it based upon just demand.
Good morning, Andrew. Thanks for speaking to us today. So when we're talking about the vocational training, I've been an operator all my life for the most part. We're trying to get these guys and ladies to be trained in our industry. There's a lot of passing of the buck. So the dealer doesn't want to do it because they don't want to invest the money. The distributor doesn't want to do it because they don't want to invest the money. The manufacturer doesn't want to get involved because then there's a liability. We have associations that govern us, sort of. You know, there are associations that help the industry. They're not really pushing it as much as we think they should, but yet we got a major decline in the quality of the install and people that are available to do a very big ticket item like flooring. It's a huge ticket. It's very expensive to the consumer. And if it fails, it's a big disaster for the dealer or the consumer. So how would you go about it? Because to me, there needs to be licensing, something that puts it at a level above, like an apprenticeship for an electrician, a plumber. All these guys have to go through that training and get a certification to do this in a way that they can do it legally. We don't require that in most of our states. It's not required to be licensed to do what we do, yet it's a big ticket exposure to the client.
Yeah, how many of you share that concern? It sounds like a whole lot of you. I love this direction in part because this is what I see as like a collective action problem and maybe a collective action opportunity. So right now, you all, you're doing like X million dollars in business. It's a problem, but you don't have the resources to try and address this. You just kind of, make do. Now, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry overall, and this is a problem that has serious repercussions, even beyond your businesses. I mean, it's a way of life. It's like if I can't get someone to do work on my home or my business, then where are we? So I think that there is an opportunity. As an entrepreneur, I smell an opportunity where you could have a voluntary certification program that doesn't have any regulatory weight or authority, but becomes like a kind of Better Business Bureau like feather in the cap of someone who pursues it. And if you are an experienced installer, getting the certification would be a snap. It'd be like, hey, it's like, here's my work, here are the jobs I've done, here's my experience. It'd be like, done and done. Now, if you don't know what the hell you're doing, then it's harder. And then if the certification actually has weight, I can imagine the retailers in this room being like, we use people who've been certified by like the Installer Certification Association, the ICA. I just made that shit up. But but that is half of what entrepreneurship is making things up and then naming them. If you name it, then all of a sudden it becomes real. I kid you not, the ICA is going to exist just because of this conversation. So if you have like the Installer Certification Association, it becomes like this voluntary thing, but then it ends up just being like a signal for experienced good installers, and then eventually it'll have market impact and weight because someone's like, wait a minute, if I get the certification, then all of a sudden, I can charge 10% more. I can do this, I can do that. So this is the kind of thing that I think there should be someone pursuing, and I'm going to suggest that it's the kind of thing that together, or some of the, like one of the things I love about the folks who are behind FloorCon, they're just freaking problem solvers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. They want to make your lives better. They see a structural problem. They're like, hey, maybe we should put some resources on that. And they actually, you can sense this maybe from the nature of FloorCon, but they have some real resources to bring to bear. It's freaking magical. It's like in a way that you're running like a business that has a certain margin, but there are now people that care about you and your success because your success ends up feeding into their success. Look at that, I just put some pressure on the FloorCon guys, sorry about that, but I think ideally the government would actually be trying to solve this problem at its guts, but in the meantime, I think there are some things you could do that help reward people for trying to do the right things. The Installer Certification Association.
And it's out there. Brian Miller from BJM Installation Services that I since sold. It was a Lowe's company, but at 120 installers in California, paid hourly, and everybody thinks, oh, what a headache. But again, culture, you guys work on your culture, work on a program. One of our other statements is you're always hiring, always be hiring. And then build your guys up. Like, we've got guys that we helped get their contractor's license. So we had a program to pay for their contractor's license to get them through that process. In the last 5 years, we've turned out 4 guys. One of the guys has got 4 or 5 guys underneath him, done $1 million plus. The second guy did the same thing. So when you start getting traction and you are actually helping these guys grow their business and aren't doing like a lot of the Lowe's guys are squishing their prices down, you build good people around you who build other good people.
I love that. That's a tremendous story. That's what I try to do in my business, was like, look, if you try and invest in folks, then they'll end up sticking around and becoming better. If you nickel and dime them, then they'll end up doing less, and then they contract. I mean, so a guy named Dan Gilbert runs Quicken Loans, owns the I don't know if you guys know Dan Gilbert. Anyway, by name, he's a really good dude. I felt terrible, about he had a stroke a couple years ago, but he said something to me a number of years ago that I took to heart. He said, "If you have a choice, choose growth." And he was right. And so if you approach what's happening with your installers and like, okay, let's say I'm trying to grow, I need these people to stick around, I need them to grow too. And then that ends up fueling your growth. One of the toughest things is like when you're in like in an anti-growth or a contracting environment, then people end up making different decisions, and you see different types of character come through, honestly. But if you have a choice and you invest in growth and you're in a growth environment, then it ends up paying off many, many times over, as I think it did for you. So I love the fact that you're sharing that.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for coming speaking with us. My mom is a big fan of yours. She's sitting in front row.
Hey.
So one of my question is, with the tension between China and U.S. rises, what is your advice for a Chinese flooring manufacturers trying to get into the U.S. market?
Wow. Yeah, indeed. So, as you can all tell, I'm Asian, and but the things I've done in my career have not been focused or centered on that. They've been focused on trying to solve people's problems and make their lives better. So let's say you're a Chinese manufacturer and you're trying to make inroads into the U.S. Really, folks are going to ask you essentially like what value are you bringing? What's in it for me? And so there are tons of retailers, and it's here today, who just want to deliver better value for their customers. And if they think that your product is a way to deliver better value for their customers, then they'll want to talk to you. So I would say to lead with that, like the value proposition you're trying to build and offer, and less upon, where the products come from or the nature of the company. Because at the end of the day, a lot of customers are just going to want a great, reliable product at a good price that comes in reliably. And the folks here want the exact same thing. So if you can deliver that, then people here will want to talk to you, I'm sure. Well, by the way, in this situation, you have to say the name of the company. What's the name of the company? Yeah, go ahead.
So my dad picked the name of the company after Italian football players, which is really funny. And our company name is Gilardino Flooring. Gilardino Flooring. And my name is Emily. Hi, everyone.
Oh, hey. That's so sweet.
Thank you.
Named after Italian football players. That's funny. Hi, good bet. That's why my name is Giancarlo Espinosa.
Hi, Andrew. Well, you said that under Trump's administration, he hasn't built any infrastructure, which I don't agree, and it's not true. At least he built up the Great Wall along our borders.
I appreciate the observation. Do you have a question? I mean, I thought that was. But do you have a question? No, it's fine.
Yeah, just about how your comments about it. I think Trump has also done a lot with his administration as well. So in terms of the infrastructure, what do you think you would build the infrastructure with if you are under sitting on his seat?
So I want infrastructure that's going to help provide paths for people. So especially because like we just threw down on a very significant like highway bridge infrastructure project. To me, it really would be about human infrastructure like vocational schools. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. Like you can look it up. Like I'm all about trying to address some of the structural problems in our labor market. So the number that motivates me is something called the labor force participation rate, which right now, as we're here together, it's wonky, whatever. It's like 62%. So 62% of working age adults are in the labor market, which by the way is a lot lower than other industrialized modern economies. And every percentage point corresponds to something like 2.5 million people who are at home. And I think that's terrible, because if you're at home, then you tend to become like less energized and productive over time. So anything we can do to get that rate up, I would invest in. And so you have direct building projects which help somewhat, but if you can put people into areas of structural need, then that can pay off for years and years. Imagine if you all were knee-deep in installers, like you just had all the installers that you ever could want. How much more would your businesses grow? And that's not just this industry. Like you can take that across like all sorts of industries. HVAC, any of it. Like everyone has a freaking labor shortage right now in a country where 38% of our working age people are not in the workforce. That stuff drives me crazy. Wow. So that's what I would want to invest in.
Good morning. I'm Buddy Mitchell, and you're a lot different than Fox News told me to think about you. So,
sure.
No, when you talked about the backbone of our country being small business, I don't think either party looks at that. They're always talking about big business and big things, and it's like if we're going to change the installation problem, we can't have the attitude that someone said that they get paid too much. We as a company looked at our decline this year, because we declined a little bit because of the economy, and said we got to pay our installers more. And so we raised.
Wow, I love that.
So because our installers are our family, and if they can't pay their bills because they're getting less work from us, or because of inflation and across the board. So we just said, let's just give them both our hard surface and soft surface. I'm 53 and I have a hard time walking down the stairs this morning because I spent my 20s and 30s on my knees building stuff. I didn't do flooring back then. I built decks and patios and framed and did trim, and it's like my body's used up at 50, and luckily I have a mind to go with it so I can grow a company. But we have to, if we're gonna fix this installation problem. My carpet installers, when I started in the flooring business in 2010, were being paid $4 a yard. And in Denver, they're still being paid $4 to $5 a yard. And it's like, we as the companies have to bond together and say, we're gonna pay these guys more. And as soon as you say that, you're afraid that now you're going to be overpriced. But if everybody got together and say, we're going to fix this by raising installation prices, it would help, because who wants to get into a business that they're used up at 40?
Thank you, sir, so much. What's your name?
I'm Buddy.
I think that is the power of this room, where if you feel like you have to compete against everyone here, then you're scared to pay your installers more and raise prices. But if you were all to look around and say, you know what, we've got a massive supply problem in terms of people who want to do this work, the most powerful thing we could do is to treat them a little better and pay them a bit more. Then if everyone follows suit, then the just customer looks up and says, well, that's how much it costs. Because I called multiple places and that's just how much it costs. That's exactly the kind of thing that should be happening through the brand new ICA. No, I'm kidding. But this is, in my mind, the right approach, and I'm so glad that you shared it and also shared your story, because a lot of people here can relate. You know, it's like treating people like human beings at the end of the day, you know what I mean? It's like these installers are human beings just trying to put food on the table. Like if they were getting paid $4 a yard 12 years ago, I mean, you know, they're looking up and did their food stay the same price that entire time? Definitely not. And so they're looking around saying, okay, like what is my path? And then their kids or their friends are looking at them and saying, hey, like, is this something I want to do? If that person's able to look up and be like, look, it's really hard work, it's difficult, but like I'm getting paid this much, and you know, I can provide for my family in a way that I'm really proud of, then their friend looks up and says, okay, like maybe I'll follow you to the next job. Maybe I'll like get a little bit of work that next time, you know? But if they're breaking down and saying like, hey, this is not where you want to go, then the problem never gets better.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Jerry Levinson. And you mentioned earlier about creating content. So for small business owners that are trying to get out there, create the content, is that focused on the company or the people? Like, should somebody be promoting themselves, be that personality, be a little bit on the entertaining side? So how do you get out there?
I love it so much. That's awesome. I'll tell you the story. I led initially during the company with very, very much company offering product, workers first. I would actually show up to classes or clients and not tell them I was the CEO of the business. I would go through entire arcs and then just, they'd find out I was the CEO like a month in. And I'm not sure if that was like a cultural thing on my part. Like my argument was, I didn't want them to think I was special because then maybe like they'd think that the only reason they're having a good experience was because I was the CEO. And so that they tell their friends, they'd be like, hey, you have to get the CEO. And then I'd be like, oh shit, like I don't want to be doing everything. So I tried to like downplay myself and lead with the company. That said, that totally reversed when I ran for office. And my instincts when I was running for office were initially being like, hey, let's lead with ideas. And it turns out that in that domain, people don't care about ideas. What they care about is people. And that is true in the business context too, where people love putting a human being on a business and saying, okay, I can trust this business because I can sense that this person's a real human, and if things get to a certain point, I can call that human. So I'm going to say there is no right answer in terms of which choice you make, but the choice you make is going to be based upon who you are and your comfort level. Some of you think like, you know what, I'd love to tell my own story. Like I'd love to talk about how long we've been in this business. I want to put my values out there. I kind of like the idea of being the face of this thing. And if that's true, you should embrace that and own that and become that, because it'll probably be good for your business. If you're the sort of person who everything I just said makes you cringe, then you should definitely embrace that too and be like, look, like we're not going to make this about me. We're going to make this about customers, the product, the people who work for us, et cetera, and maybe even like a little bit of like a corporate brand. Whichever one you choose, like you'll get some feedback, and then you'll see if it's working. But what I am going to say is don't force it. Like if everything I just said about self-promotion made you cringe, like do not think you necessarily have to do it. Because after you do it, it unfortunately becomes something that you have to sustain and feed. One of the drawbacks of this entire social media content universe I'm talking about is that it takes constant maintenance, where if a post isn't current or you're not doing stuff, then it seems kind of old and cold. So you want to pick a path that you can stick with for a while and not get tired of it. Did I just give you a little bit too much insight into my life? I have to feed this monster? I have 3 million followers, what? Anyway.
Question for you. Over here.
Thank you. Oh,
no problem.
I should just look this direction no matter what.
That's good. You brought up Dan Gilbert. I'm going to give you a quote of his, okay? A great idea is just a great idea. Innovation is worshipped, is a Dan Gilbert quote. When you talk about getting people off of their couch that are unemployed or whatever it may be, how would you execute on making that happen?
Are you talking specifically about installers?
No, I'm just people, you brought up about the people in the country. As a leader of the country, how would you make that change?
I think if you're looking to execute in the way you're describing, you try and find pockets that you know it's going to work, and then you max them out until it stops working. You know, so let's say your goal is to get the literally, unfortunately, tens of millions of Americans off the couch into productive opportunities. Then you find a niche where you're like, okay, where do I know that if these people were willing to do it, we actually have jobs that are going to be here for the long haul? So this would be one. Like, what is the total number of missing installers in the industry?
That's an unknown. I have no idea.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't think you had the number at your fingertips, but I just wanted to get a ballpark from you all. I'm guessing it's in the probably six figures, right? Like that if the industry had an extra like 100,000 installers, what it would mean is that you just speed up the calendar, and then you'd be looking around for more customers because you'd actually be able to meet demand.
My question was more as a political
Yeah. So
standpoint.
if you were me, let's say I was the leader of the free world, I'd look around and be like, okay, how do we get, you know, and unfortunately the number is massive. I'm going to do the math. So if you're missing 38% of a $200 million workforce, you're missing about 76 million people out of the workforce. Now, there's no such thing as 100% labor force participation. Ours is 62% or so. A high rate for an industrialized country is something like 68% or 70% for like, so even in a really high functioning economy, like you're gonna have 30% or so people out. But that 8% that's missing is approximately 18 million or so. So then you look around and say, okay guys, how are we gonna try and bridge an 18 million gap? You come to this industry and you say, you guys have a delta of 200,000 missing installers, so I'm going to invest tons until I address that at least, you know, like 50, 60%. And now that 100,000 installers, that makes a tiny dent in the 18 million I'm going for. But then you multiply the 100,000 times the other missing niches in the American workforce, and one thing that pisses me off is when all of our political figures just talk about STEM and missing tech people. I mean, it's so unproductive. Like, you know, only 35% of Americans are gonna graduate from college. What about the freaking 65% that aren't? It's like, the fact that our politics focuses so much on fucking college graduates drives me nuts. Which, by the way, is a symptom of like anyway. So what you do is you take a crack, like, can you get the 18 million, like, you know, I mean, that would take, like, frankly, a very, very poorly functioning economy and make it humming. I don't think you could do that in any, like, 4-year time frame. But can you, like, get maybe, like, 2 or 3 million of that 18 million over a 4-year time frame if you go really, really hard and you invest diligently? Yeah, I think you can. And that would be my mission. I'd be like, look guys, I can't solve everything, but I can get 3 million more Americans back into the fucking workforce.
I've got a thought for everybody on this where in part of my Rotary class, or Rotary meeting, they brought up immigration and birth rate. And if you guys all really want to grow the economy, the birth rate, when it drops below 2.8, and it's about 2.3, if you don't make it up with immigration, we have a shrinking economy. So what are your thoughts about that and how we can finally do something about helping people immigrate?
Well, one of the questions I had is, like, what proportion of the installers are immigrants or children of immigrants? Yeah, I'm going to guess enormously high. And so we should embrace reality. If there's one thing I'm about, it's like, what is the real freaking situation on the ground? The real situation on the ground is that if you were to take out the immigrant population, including some people who don't have documents, the economy probably collapses like pretty quickly because there's a whole host of jobs that right now are being filled by these people that Americans just will not do. And so with that as your reality, you look around and say, okay, like, what are we gonna do? These people live in this country, some of them have kids in this country. We should try and actually include them in the formal economy, which, by the way, most all of them are already in, and a lot of them are paying taxes already, like regardless of whether or not they're they're being included in a whole bunch of things. So this was something, by the way, Marco Rubio proposed like X years ago. He was like, look, like we should have bipartisan immigration reform. Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, what happened to that Marco Rubio plan? He was told, within the party, be like, hey, Marco, like, quiet down, like, like, and so then the following week he came back and said, hey, guys, like, I was kidding, nothing to see here, and just like, that was, oh, really, you can look it up. That's pretty much the way it played out. So one of the things that drives me now is that a U.S. senator said this to me, said that a problem is now worth more to us unaddressed than addressed. Because if it's unaddressed, I can get you mad about it, I can raise money on it, I can get votes on it. If I solve the problem, what happens? People say, like, I compromised, I worked with the enemy, I'm ideologically impure, my job security goes down, not up. So I have a feeling that's what happened to Marco and that immigration package. But you can look at different problems and see the same freaking thing. It's like, if I let the problem fester, 94% win rate. Like, well, what's my problem? Meanwhile, like, who's living with the consequences of it? Folks like you who are trying to grow businesses, families who are just trying to make their way in this country. So I'm also the children of immigrants myself, and so like I think that immigrants who come here and just want to work hard and make a better living for themselves and their families, and are already doing that, like we should be including them. This was a Fox thing. It's like I was on a debate stage and I said like, hey, I'm the son of immigrants and blah blah blah. And then like some conservative commentator was like, Yang, you're not the immigrants we're talking about. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know what that means. Anyway.
Hello, Mr. Wang. My name's AJ Sauce. I'm in the middle section over here. I'm mostly an installer, and then I do measuring, and then I do sales when I get the chance. But my question is, what would be your idea of finding more installers? Because when you think of installers, like what most of them I know, is they only know about installing because they have a family member who does it or a friend who does it. And that's the only way they know about flooring installing. Like, they don't think it's a career or anything. They just, because they have a cousin or because they have an uncle that does it, they're like, oh, that's how I got into it. Like, what would be your idea for like more advertising, or how can we find more?
Yeah, I love that so much, because I think that there is a path here, an opportunity. So let's say you have this this Installer Certification Association, and let's say that they take a video of you being like, hey, I'm an installer, this is how much experience I have, this is how much money I make, and like, it's hard work, but it's rewarding work. We do real things, we make people happy. Like I brought my cousin in, and we're doing good stuff. And then that was a video that actually got fed into people's feeds, and you targeted in particular geographies where there's a need and the rest of it. You could do that pretty effectively, and then you could, frankly, put a little bit of a reward behind it. It's like, if you bring in a new installer who gets certified by the ICA, we'll pay you $100. We'll pay you $200, whatever it is. I mean, like that's what, so we're not above that. I mean, like, how much money is attached to that person showing up and being able to work, do good work, and then maybe even choose it as a field. So the problem right now is that there's no one who's making it their interest to try and educate people about this field, even though there's like a giant pot of gold attached to it, both for the individual and for the industry. So you need an org just to invest the resources and then have some benchmarks and measurements, because I totally believe you that right now it's all happening informally through word of mouth, with someone saying, hey, I do this, hey, check it out, da-da-da-da-da. And that's not going to solve the problem. But thank you for what you're doing, and I have a feeling you might be starring in a video at some point in the not-so-distant future, if someone here just gets your info, and then we can, like, because you're a good-looking gentleman, and this thing would be, it'd be like the new freaking poster.
Thank you.
See, they like the idea. They turned around and said, yeah, I can see that. All right, one last question. Where's that box at? I know you've got one. What are my picks? Oh, there we go. Sure, so yeah, I think.
My English is not good, so I just want to thank you. How to say that? You are a great speaker. We are proud of you. I just learned one sentence. Our company offers a good, high-quality product at competitive price for you. We made the SPC and the commercial flooring. Thank you for giving me a chance to meet all of you. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
We are proud of you.
Well, I think that is a fitting note to end on, because that is the spirit of entrepreneurship, enterprise, and opportunity that you all represent. You truly are the backbone of your communities and this country. And I hope that I have the opportunity to make your lives a little bit easier, because you all deserve it. Thank you all very, very much.